Hey everyone, and welcome to today's session on SDS2 Toolbox. I'll be covering some of the toolbox items offered, and James Schwartz will be taking a more in-depth look at the Tekla PowerFab plugin later on. I'm Laura Sinclair. I've been with SDS2 for a little over 10 years. I started out in the support department and then moved on to doing some demos for sales and helped with the development side for other markets. I now do the product marketing for our software, so if you've watched our product videos over the last few years, you've probably heard my voice. I also help coordinate all of the webinars and run everything from behind the scenes.
Hello, my name is James Schwartz. I began work in 1984 drafting by hand on commercial projects in Montreal, Canada. In 1994, I joined a company that worked with several fabricators on everything from large commercial to heavy industrial projects, including some notable stadiums, which are located in both Canada and the US. In 1994, I moved from the drafting board to using SDS2 for production. This lasted till 2000 when I joined the SDS2 team in Lincoln, Nebraska. My current title is Software Advocate, and primary tasks include being a product owner of load planning, as well as several other key projects. I am responsible for research, development, and internal and external software assistance. I am on the AISC BIM Guide and the BIM Approval Committee, and over the years have spoken at NACC, Impact, and SIA promoting SDS2 products. Other tasks include integration between engineers, fabricators, BIM coordinators, GCs, detailers, and erectors, consulting on projects, developing training programs, and assisting programming staff. I have also had the great privilege of performing seminars and training sessions around the world.
Today we'll be covering what is SDS2 Toolbox, some SDS2 plugins offered, our partner integration plugins. I'll be giving a demo of some of the SDS2 plugins, and then James will finish with a deep dive into the Tecla PowerFab plugin. So what is SDS2 Toolbox and how can this benefit me as a user? If you're current on your subscription or maintenance fees, you can take advantage of the collection of additional tools, components, and plugins for specialized project needs. So this could be from extending multiple beams to a column at once, or it could be working with Core Brace and using their plugin to input Core Brace bracing into SDS2 model. In the demo, I'll show the leveling plate component, which allows you to add a plate for the anchor bolt plans to the bottom of a user base plate. It duplicates the shape and the holes of the selected base plate, and there's additional options in there like a shelf dimension, the thickness, and I can adjust the hole size and type. The welded studs component in SDS2 allows you to add shear or threaded studs to any face of a beam or column in a variety of patterns. You can set your spacing and positioning settings to automatically model welded studs and generate detailed drawings with the detailing templates. The deck support component makes it easy to add in the deck support material to the top flange of a beam. The breakpoints can be added automatically around beams or joists, or you can manually add them and choose your breakpoints, or you can just have none. The column deck support beam component allows you to add in decking support material to a column with the reference to the top or bottom flange of the supporting beam. And then material can be added to any face of the column that you set, and you can do the match the width of the face. The component also includes templates for detailed drawings. And then some other toolbox items would be like member line extend that I mentioned earlier, cost estimator, dimension clearance, dimension member, galvanizing check tool, and the easy beam release. The Tecla PowerFab plugin, James will be covering more in depth, but it's a dedicated plugin allowing you to easily import or export data between SDS2 and Tecla PowerFab. The EMI handrail export helps you cut back on your machine programming time for handrail pipe cutting and bending by sending your data directly from SDS2 to a Peacemaker control software and streamlines your model to machine process. The Zeman Beam Assembler is an export that supports seamless integration between SDS2 and the Zeman robotic welders for automated fabrication solutions. And then some other partner plugins in the toolbox are like the Shuriken bolted HSS splices, the MyTech side plate connections, the Strumus BIM Review, Core Brace, Durafuse, and Bid Wizard. So now I'll jump into the demonstration. So the leveling plate component allows you to add a plate as a miscellaneous member to the bottom of the columns that have a user base plate applied for anchor bolt plans. So it'll duplicate the shape of the base plate with the options to add in a shelf dimension, a plate thickness, and the hole size and type. So I'll go ahead and add in a shelf dimension that I'll add in on every side. So I'll put in 1 inch here, and then my hole settings, I'm going to leave at matchable. So this is going to match the holes that are used in my base plate. I also have a grout hole, so it did duplicate that grout hole as well. So when I select this, now you can see that it is a miscellaneous member, and I can see that in my model tree. You can see the grout hole here, and if I edit that, it will say that it is a grout hole. Now when I come back and edit this, maybe I want to change it off of matchable, and I also want to just override that and set it to an oversized round and maybe make this 1.5 inches. And now you can see this is an oversized round hole. I can select multiple columns at once that have different base plates on it. So I added in here a round, I had an L shape. I also had that cruciform one that had additional holes. Maybe I'll just put 1/4 inch for my shelf dimension, and I will leave this at matchable. So see it added it for my round. It also added it for my cruciform. And I have it for my L-shaped as well. I can add in an advanced selection, so maybe I just want to select, I already have this saved, but I have an advanced selection to select all of my base or my columns that have a specific base plate, maybe my BP1, and then I can go ahead and apply my leveling plate. Now to take a look at the detail, I will want to detail this with templates. And you can see that the hole dimensions are called out. I have my grout hole getting called out. And I also have my plate dimensions. And now I can also detail the erection view. So maybe I want to detail my AV plan. Come in my settings, set this to wire, and then in my annotations, I'll click on dimension anchor bolt layout. And now when I take a look at this anchor bolt layout, you'll see that the polygons are there for my leveling plate, but nothing is called out for that leveling plate. So to get that to call out, I can go into my display options and turn on my show hidden members, because not everyone's going to want that information called out. So if I come in here, I have that turned on, I can go into my erection view cleanup, and I'll turn on my piece mark and my section size for my miscellaneous members. And now you can see everything's called out. So once it's called out, then I can go back into my display options and turn off the show hidden members. And now I would just want to clean up that information a little bit. So I can move that piece mark, move the section size, and clean that up to how I would like that. All right, moving on to our welded studs. The first example that I'm going to do is just add it to the top flange of this beam. So I'll go ahead and add in my welded studs. And I can change the stud type. We do have a shear stud or a threaded stud. If I have a threaded stud, I can add in a nut or a washer. But for this example, I'll just have a shear stud. And then the position when this is a beam, it'll be that I can add it to the top flange, the bottom flange, the near side or far side. And then the pattern settings, I can do fixed or equal. I'll do fixed for this one. I'll do my stud spacing at 2 feet. And my left distance setting to fixed for my right and my left. Now that I have that set to fixed, then my pattern underrun I'll leave at my left end, and then I have my weld settings. So you see my left end, I have my pattern underrun. And maybe I want to change my right end now to be the underrun. And then I can change it to both as well, just to show that example. So I'll go ahead and change my pattern settings to equal, and I will change my stud column. It can be 1 or 2. I'll change it for 2 for now. And maybe my end settings for my left distance and my right distance I'll change to a minimum. And I'll leave the pattern right now for normal. I can come back in, and for my stud column pattern, I can change this to staggered. So we'll start staggering in the back first. Or I can do a reverse stagger, and then it will start staggering in the front. Now let's say maybe I want to add, we'll change this back to 1, and then I'm going to change this to my near side web. When I have it set to 1, it will put it at half the nominal depth. So this is a W18 beam. So it did put it right at 9 inches. But maybe I want it to be my half the actual depth. There is a request for that, but right now I'm just going to put in a half just so you see that it moves. You can put in a column offset and you'll see that it moved down a ½ inch. I'll just go ahead and move this back up to my top flange for later on. I can also add these to a column. So here's a shear stud to a column. And it can even be to like a sloped column. So maybe I want to add it to the flange of the slope column. And I'll go ahead and change this to a threaded stud and add in a nut and a washer. And I'll leave this at my face C, so you see that the position now changes for a column, face A, B, C, and D. Now if I wanted different spacing on either end, I would want to run this component twice. So maybe my left end I want to be 18 inches and my right end I want it to be 24-inch spacing. Now taking a look at this detail, you will want to detail with templates. And while that's running through, I will go ahead and add in a top flange view for this beam that has the welded studs on it. And I'll go ahead and detail this as well. So now you can see that my welded studs are on here. I have the weld called out. I also have the spacing. So it's saying 17 at 2 foot. And then we have my beam as well. We have my spacing. And then you'll see that the top view is now added as well. Now moving on to my deck support. So you'll see that I have a deck support that's added over here. So now maybe I want to add one on this beam. I'll go ahead and hide this handrail for later on. I can do my component add and add in my deck support. For now, I'm going to leave this at none for my break points, but I could break it at my joists and beams, and I can manually break it. I do have an option of wide flange channel, angle, HSS. My toe direction will be out, and I'll come back to the table up above. And my setback, since there's no break point, this doesn't apply to that. I have my minimum support length of my deck support, and then my offset from center line is -1.25 inches. That'll be from the heel for my angle and for my channel, and then I had my weld settings. Now if I come in here and measure, you'll see that it's 1.25 inches from my center line to the heel of that angle. So now let's say I do want to add in some breaks for the deck support. So I'll do my component add again. I can break it with beams and joist members. If I had other members, then it just wouldn't select those. I can select it with a box, or I can select by holding down my shift key. You'll see up above now, there is a table filled out now that there have been breaks added, and it will come from my left end distance. And if I want to add in my own break, I can go ahead and add in a row. I could also add a point and manually pick the point, but I will go ahead and manually put in, let's say, at 8 foot, but if I don't want that, I can delete the row. I don't want to hit the erase table, or it'll erase the entire table. Now my setbacks, my left setback from point and right setback from point apply. And in my additional options, the add left end support material and add right end support material will come back to. So you'll see that they are now broken, and when I talked about the 4 inches, I can go ahead and measure, and that's 4 inches on either side. If it is off a little bit, then you will want to come back in and look at the round to the nearest. I do have that set at a 1/2 inch. Now coming into the add left end support material. So if I uncheck that from that left break, I can take that material off. I can also do it from my right end support material. In this case, I'll just turn it back on. So now I can also add in, I could do manual points, but maybe I want to break it at these beams, but I also want to break it at the center of the beam. So I can go in and add it, and then the third option is to both. So there's beams and joists, there's both, so I will select the beams or joists that I want it to break at, and then I will select the point manually that I want to break it at. And now you'll see not only is the column for the left end distance filled out, but also on the right side, the angle is filled out since these are skewed beams framing in. I'll go ahead and change my toe direction, and I'm gonna just take an offset off for here. I did leave it at 4 inches on either side. Now it might look like that's a little bit more than 4 inches, but it's actually where that beam, if that material were to intersect with the other beam, that's where it's reading from. And then just to show a couple more examples really quick, I can add this on a sloping beam. I'll just hit none for here. And then I can also add it to a web normal beam as well if my member's web normal. These are shop welded. So if I did want this to be its own member, I would want to break it apart. And just to point out too, these are added on the material length, not the work point. And I added in a channel here just to show a different section size. And then I'll just show the detail really quick of this. I want to detail with the templates. And then I have my angle called out there. And then it will also say it's center. And I would probably want to add in a top view. And then the final one that we have is the column deck support beam. I would want to select my beam first. And then in here, you'll say what the column faces that you want to add this deck support to. I'll put the face A since I want to add it to the flange, and then I can do my member ends. My left end, my right end are both. I have my section size. I can do a wide flange, channel, angle, WT, or an HSS-TS. I do have the beam location. I can do the top of the beam or the bottom of the beam. The vertical offset would be positive and negative, and I'll just put in the length here for 11 inches, and we'll come back to the other settings. So I do have one. I just added in at 11 inches to show. I can match the length to the face width, so I'll match the length of that deck support to the face of the column width. And then let's say now I want to change it. Maybe I want it to be actually on the web of the column. So I can change it from face A to face B. And when I have it here, it'll put it in when it says match the length to the face width. This would go to the K's of the column web. Maybe I want to move the web material to the outside. So it'll go from the outside of those columns. And maybe I want to, if I take this off, then I can extend the length. If I put in a negative ½ inch, it will come in 1/4 of an inch on either side, and I can put in my weld. So I showed the top. Now maybe I want to put it in reference to the bottom of the beam. And I could put in my vertical offset of maybe a -8 inches just to show. And then we have it the -8, so it's down below the beam. And I can even add this to multiple faces. Now there is that checkbox to match face settings. I'll come back to that, but basically match face settings means that will be the same settings for both my face A and face B. But then I can come in and actually override this too. So if I edit that and uncheck the match face settings, then I have my face A position settings. Maybe I want that to match the face width. And also I want that to be 2½ inches instead of 8 inches for the top of beam. Now you can see that they're both different. I can even add this to a sloping column. I'll just show this very quickly, but I'll select my beam. And I'll just leave this at my face A, and I'll just hit OK. And now you can see that it also adds it to sloping columns. If I go in and show my detail here with my templates, then I have my angle called out, I have my weld, I have the angle, it says near side, and I have my extension dimension there. The last thing to cover is that there are settings for these defaults. If I go into my project settings, my plugin defaults, and component, I have all of my components that I just covered. If I click on the column deck support beam, you see all of the settings. And I'll just quickly go into the other ones. For the deck support, there is a difference between the edit window and the deck support. It would be the custom color for the material color and the material finish, but you can change a case-by-case basis if you were to edit the material. And then we just have the welded studs as well. So that covers some of the SDS2 Toolbox items. I will now pass it over to James to go more in depth on the Tecla PowerFab.
I'd like to welcome you to the new Tecla PowerFab interface workshop, Making Life Easier. The first question asked is always why. It's quite obvious. We had an interface plugin for the XML export that was not specifically designed for the Tecla PowerFab, but instead was a generic interface used for several products. The plugin had a lot of unnecessary options for Tecla PowerFab that caused confusion and even unusable exports. We needed a dedicated export and import for Tecla PowerFab. Some of the information in the export would cause issues in Tecla PowerFab. For example, zones would override lot names on import, or details would cause an issue when the detail and the details sheet name matched. We'll come back to this topic in the presentation. Another big reason for this was the FabTrol end of life. Many fabricators have been switching to Tecla PowerFab, and incorrect exports would cause fabricators that contracted out their detailing work to prefer projects to be done on Tekla instead of SDS2 just due to cleaner imports. This in turn would eventually reduce our market and reputation due to something as simple as incorrect settings. We need to allow our clients to enter into the Tecla PowerFab world. Let's begin with a little history. FabSuite was purchased by Tekla and the name was changed to Tekla EPM. And now, once again, the name has changed to Tekla PowerFab. In SDS2 2022, the plugin will reflect this new name. To verify this, I've added this snapshot on the right from Tecla PowerFab version 2021i Service Pack 4. The KISS format has been around for a long time, and in this BIM world of construction, it just does not provide all the data required in this data-rich environment. In short, KISS is being deprecated. We'll still maintain that option in SDS2 under the guise of the old FabSuite Tekla EPM KISS. Which reminds me, with 2021 and earlier releases, the naming was quite confusing. By the name displayed, you were not sure if you were exporting a KISS version or an XML version. 2022 has all the names updated and consistent throughout the system. The KISS export will be FabSuite Tekla EPM KISS, and the XML will be the Tecla PowerFab. Even the icons reflect the difference. The preferred format for the 3D model in the fabrication industry is IFC EM11. SDS2 has exported EM11 for quite some time, but the member properties were not exported with this format. This is not the case anymore. You will be able to add all that data to your export. So, all this wonderful productivity increase comes to you free, so long as you are current with your software service. You'll be able to download this toolbox item from the SDS2 site. For those who are not current, you will still have the full status transfer, which was the previous export used. In that case, you will want to view the Tecla PowerFab SDS2 integrations page on sds2.com to try to get the export that you need. But you will not have any of the new improvements or the nice, clean, dedicated Tecla PowerFab export, which will simplify your export process, giving you all the data you need. In this picture, we see the Tecla EPM export from version 2021. I will now give you a breakdown of what has been done. From the home screen, I will open the Tecla PowerFab. Note for modeling, you will find the export in the Toolbox ribbon. That is, of course, once you download and install it from the SDS2 website. If it is not installed on your system, when you try to run the plugin, you will be directed to the location on the SDS2 site for downloading. Import or export has not changed. You'll still be able to use this tool to import status data from Tecla PowerFab into SDS2 using the same process as you did before. The transfer type, status only, has been removed. It didn't really apply to Tecla SDS2 interface anyways. Data source appears to be the same with sheet and member, except you'll notice that only sheets has the all option enabled. All only applies to sheets because it was a common practice for detailers to create a boneyard of items, to develop things like connections, for example. And these would end up being exported as well because they were not set to existing. This would give extra material in Tecla PowerFab. We also have the default set to sheets, since this was what we found most commonly used by the clients that we surveyed. Members will still generate a selection list when launched from the home screen as before. When in modeling, this will require the clients to select which member material data to be sent out. The Include Bill of Material option was always required to be checked for the export to Tecla PowerFab. Newbies to the process would often not check this, or it was forgotten. So with the new plugin, this data will always be exported into the XML file, so the option was removed. In the new plugin export screen, you'll see the option to exclude zone data. This is unchecked by default. This was added because the SDS2 zones are hard-coded in Tecla PowerFab to put this data into the lot numbers field. This caused the issue of lot numbers to be updated with each import from SDS2. Not very helpful if you're manually modifying lot numbers in Tecla PowerFab. Many clients were not aware that you do have the ability to prevent this in Tecla PowerFab. Again, see the Tecla PowerFab SDS2 integration page on sds2.com for more information on this. But to make life easier, we just added the option here to remove zones from being exported. The drawing group has been revamped. Notice we now have more options that you can set to exclude drawing types from your export, and I emphasize exclude. Before I get to the enhancement, we have PDF set as the default 2D export format. Is anybody using something other than PDF anymore? Anyway, okay, the pain point that arose in Tecla PowerFab, or as I affectionately will call it from now on TPF, is when you had a detail sheet name and the detail name the same. For example, 1B1 for the detail sheet and for the member detail. When you would select the item in TPF drawing log, the detail of the member would be opened and not the detail sheet. People want to see the sheet with the BOM, not the detail. Now, by default, the detail of the member is excluded. We do give you an option still to export the detail of the member, but do you really need it? Again, TPF had a way around it, but why make life difficult? Now that the easy stuff is done, let's dig deeper into the world of CNC and IFC. First, we split up the two, CNC and IFC, due to the added option. You can set whether you want to generate the CNC configuration from setup for the export, Unfortunately, when you do this, you don't know without checking if the configuration was modified or not even set correctly for this project and/or fabricator. We added in a button that will allow you to choose from this export screen which CNC configuration you want to use. You can also select more than one configuration for the export by pressing and holding the Control key. On a side note, be aware that TPF only reads in one CNC format currently, and DSTV is the preferred format. Due to this, in the folder structure, you will see that the CNC folder contains the DSTV as files, and any other formats will be added into a subfolder with the configuration's name for the folder name. At this point, I am going to mention do not mess with the zip file and folder structure. Some have done so and really messed things up. We designed this export to be read correctly into TPF. You break it, you bought it. The member main material and submaterial has been renamed in an attempt to make it more descriptive. There is still more to know about this, so hold on to your seat for this explanation. It still functions the same, even with the name change. And if my explanation doesn't cut it for you, you can go to the Tecla PowerFab SDS2 integrations page on SDS2.com, where I explain this as well. All of this would not be necessary if clients would use the option in project settings to use Member Main Mark for main material and model. This is located in Fabricator, Piece Marking, Member and Material Piece Marking. This would cause the main material and the model to match the bill of material. Problem solved, but some still do not use this option and prefer to only use the Use Member Mark for Member Main Material and Shop Bill. This causes the main material piece mark to be different in the model from the bill of material. For example, in the model, the main material is called W19, but in the bill of material, it's called 1B1. So, if the client were to export and to have the option Model Mark Used for Main Material checked, the CNC file would be called W19, and the data for the main material will be 1B1 in Tekla PowerFab. You can see the issue already. Things will not match up, so when you run the CNC files from TPF, nothing will open because it cannot match the part marks. If you only use the option of Use Member Mark for Member Main Material in the Shop Bill in SDS2, it's easy for you to say, you will want to check the option Shipping Mark Used for Main Material on the export, which will cause a shipping mark to be used for the file name of the main material. So, W19 will be 1B1 in my example. That is why this option is set by default. But there's a catch. There's always a catch. For some customers, they only want to have the main material exported. No problem for them, and no catch. This will work just fine as it is. But if you want to also include all the submaterial in the member for the exported CNC files, you must open the CNC configuration in the home screen, Export, and check in your configuration the option Include Attached Submaterial in Member Download. This will cause all the submaterial to be exported as well for this member. I'm sorry for the complication here, but SDS2 has a lot of options, and all of these choices have a deep impact. IFC export is now so much more powerful. First off, as mentioned earlier, we'll be using the preferred EM11 IFC export. No need for a choice. You have for the IFC source, use data source. This will export only the members or those found on the selected sheet from the data source. Members. You can select which members you want in the IFC file from either a list or the model, depending on where you launched the TPF export. All members. There is a caveat with this. All members will enable the option to include or exclude concrete or joist, as well as the traditional holes, bolts, and welds. We will exclude any existing members. As a reminder, watch out for those boneyard members, as I mentioned earlier. So why these options? It is common to send out the data for sheets or members that have been completed for the submittal, but for Trimble Connect, you will want to have everything in the model. You now have the option to do this without having to leave the export tool. We are working on a scheduler that we hope to have available this year so that you'll be able to schedule an export for the EM11 of the entire model. This will allow you to keep that model in Trimble Connect up to date every evening. The option to zip has been removed. It never worked correctly anyways for Tekla PowerFab. only the XML file was zipped, and that didn't help at all. But instead, it caused all sorts of problems. Now, we will always zip all the files together, as it always was supposed to be in the correct structure. Status items will be checked by default. This was really required since data in the status settings like member description would be used to populate the category field in TPF. This would be the beam, column, brace, etc. If this does not happen on import into TPF, be sure you have it mapped in TPF to do so. There were a few other items fixed under the hood in the XML file. One I want to point out is that for settings that have a date, like hold for example, would export a not set string. This is now omitted and there is a blank. Finishes have not changed yet, but they are in the pipeline. So let's run through the list as a reminder of what we covered. Status only, removed from transfer type. All option for data source applies only to sheets. Include bill of material option built in and option removed. Exclude zone data option to prevent lot numbers from being overwritten on import. Option to exclude details and submaterial in export. Ability to select multiple CNC configurations for export from the export screen. Options for the EM11 export to be created using the data source selection, model selection, or all members, with the ability to include or exclude joists and concrete. Removed zip XML file option and will zip all the exported files with the correct file structure by default. This concludes the demonstration. I know there is more coming down the pike. Some enhancements have already been done for 2022i, but I'm not telling. I know these enhancements to this dedicated Tekla PowerFab export will make your life easier, especially those new to the process.
Thank you for that, James. And I'll touch on a couple upcoming events. We will be at NASCC next week, March 23rd through the 25th in Denver. Come see us at booth 2411. And we also have a couple presentations going on at NASCC this year as well. And also at SDS2 Summit will be on the boardwalk in San Antonio, Texas. It's a great opportunity for networking and attending sessions from your fellow users. And that will be October 19th and 20th. We'll now give you a few moments to type in your questions. And I just want to say thank you guys very much for attending our sessions this week. We hope that you learned a little something. And also thank you very much for the feedback. I'll give you a little bit more time to type in some questions. I know that there's some that have been coming in already, but we do have a couple of polls and they do help us for development reasons too. So I'm going to launch the first poll, and that would be, which item would you most like to see added in SDS2 Toolbox? We have pour stop, erection aids, lifting lugs, non-steel connection / supports, and then others. So if you want to see something else that's not featured here, go ahead and type that in the questions / the chat area. Someone is asking if there is a demo available for SDS2 Toolbox, the EMI. Let me go ahead and get to this. So I'll come to the technical support area. So this is how you get to the toolbox. So
Can't see you, Laura. There's a pole in the way.
Oh my gosh, I did it again. Oh man. Okay, well, while the poll's running, I will double check.
Just got your back there, Laura.
Yeah.
Pour stop is doing just awesome right now.
Yeah.
Every building has a pour stop.
Yeah, so it does look like the pour stop is about 60%, and then erection aids about 23%.
Let me rephrase that. Every commercial building has pour stops. Not well, even that's not right. Majority.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close that poll. I do have a couple questions from people. Can you guys see my screen? I hope so. Hold on.
I see technical support. Yes, I do.
Okay. All right, so we have the technical support area, and someone was asking in the toolbox if there's a demonstration for EMI. So we are, not all of them are have videos yet, like the Tecla PowerFab. I'll just put this portion of the webinar in the Tecla PowerFab one, but most of them should have videos. So if I click on like the leveling plate, there's a leveling plate demo here. Someone's asking about the EMI. So if I go to the EMI handrail, there is an EMI video as well. Someone was asking about the information for Tecla PowerFab. They said that James talked about that. If I go to my integrations, and then if I come down to did I miss it?
I usually just type in the search. I'm too lazy to try to find it.
Okay.
I just type in Tekla PowerFab and it'll bring me to it.
Yeah, so if I check on Tecla PowerFab and learn more, there's a document that James created, and it has a lot of information here for the Tecla PowerFab.
And that's when using the old version before. So
Yeah.
when most people are still in 2021 and they're not going to have the new PowerFab,
Yep.
or they're in 2020, they're going to really want to look at this. And also did one for Strumis. So there is another one. For
Yep.
Strumis
So there
as
is one for Strumis too. I did see that somebody asked about Strumis. So if I click on the learn more for Strumis, there is a document all for Strumis export too.
Yeah, I had to start somewhere. I started with PowerFab, and Strumis is pretty straightforward with the BSWX, so it makes it nice and easy.
Does the Tecla PowerFab tool require separate license, or is it included in the SDS2 license? It would be included, it will be in the toolbox area. So if you have a toolbox license, then you will be able to run this.
And it is for 2022. So.
Yep, somebody asked, is the plugin only for 2022? And yes, it is. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and launch some more polls. This is all for Tecla PowerFab. We're just trying to gain some information here. So what do you use for estimating? Do you use an IFC or an EM11, or do you use a KISS file? And I'll take a look at some more of these questions too.
I do want to mention we did have right now the IFC, the EM11 file is actually inside of that zip file. So the next release of this will have it broken outside of it, because people will have to go in and grab that to bring that into their Trimble Connect, because, you know, oops, put it in there, should have been out. Everything else will be zipped up nice and tight though.
Yeah, someone's asking, they did point out that the holes in the leveling plate, when I went to edit the holes, were not checked on for valid for CNC downloading. So we did turn that into the development team already. So your feedback really does help us for development for Toolbox. And the nice thing about Toolbox is it doesn't have to wait for the next release. So if we do find different issues there, or we can continue to push out different Toolbox releases and not have to wait for SDS2 releases, which is nice. Can you have an option to add in quantity for studs? This is not an option right now. They wanted to put in the quantity for studs and then the minimum distance on the left and right end. We don't have that right now, but I did turn this in as well to the development team.
Yeah, we like to have with that, you have the first stud and the last stud shown for shortening reasons. Plus it looks a lot better on the detail anyways. And, you know, obviously in the model you have them all, but in the detail you just have first and last stud with the total quantity.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna go ahead and close this poll. It looks like 60% use the KISS for estimating and 40% use an IFC or EM11.
The IFC is kind of new in there, so they're working out the kinks. I know there was a weld issue, which applies to both Tekla and SDS2, where the welds weren't being counted correctly. So I am aware of that. It was working, but apparently it somehow got broken. Software.
I just went ahead and launched the next poll. Are you currently using the oh my gosh. Are you currently using the XML format for production control? And I'm going to go through a couple more of these. Can you use material other than angle when using the deck support? Yeah, you can use angle, channel, wide flange, or HSS. Can we have the length of each piece in the table for the deck support when it's broken? That way we can modify each piece without making the component graphical. So I did go ahead and I did turn that in to the development team as well. Do you see any, James?
I don't really. My last question ends on Corey's question about
Okay.
DXF. So I'll address that too. Is that yeah, we didn't get a chance. We had a short cycle to try to get some of the stuff fixed. So our focus was just making it work better on the code we had. But we are adding in a setup in SDS2 under plugins where you'll be able to go in there, and if you want to set it to use system determined, you can go ahead and do that. And I was just joking about PDF. It seems everybody's using a lot or often using PDF, but I know that there are people that are still using the DXF and the DWG for that matter. So
we do have a question about no paint being available, and we are very, very close for that.
Perfect.
You guys aware of what the no paint is? Just no paint areas on the member.
Round slip critical bolts. In fact, there's a request too as well to change the surface finish for those materials, like a shear tab that has no paint around it. Usually needs like an SP6 instead of an SP3 type of finish, but we're not even there yet. We're still working on it.
Okay, so it looks like about 70% are not using the XML format.
Yep. I would love to know why, so that we can know what we need to fix to make it more attractive to you, because from the PowerFab, that would be a really good thing to know, is why people are just using KISS. I know why some are, but it'd be good to know, because they're really pushing from PowerFab, TPF, they're really pushing to use the XML file. So
yeah, so if you are still around and you answered no, if you could type in the questions area as to why, that would help us for feedback on what we can address for you guys. I'm just going to keep moving on. We do have quite a few polls if you want to continue to help us. Do you use the load tracking for loads when you are using lot numbers?
Or are you using lot numbers?
Got it. Can you let us know when you update something in Toolbox in the future? Yes, you can opt into, let me see if it's on the Toolbox page. Yeah, so up here, oh, the poll's running, just kidding. On the Toolbox page, up on the top, there is a subscribe to get the latest Toolbox releases. So every time that we make a Toolbox release, we will send out an email to let you guys know. So if you want to opt into that. Can you update the deck supports tool to be updated automatically when you move a joist? I don't think these are dynamic, are they, Brandon? The deck supports? I don't think so. I think you would probably have to re-add that.
If they're a component, they should be dynamic if something changes. Okay. I'm not sure if the members that are causing it to break or break apart the material are stored, and I'm not sure about that. We'd have to check that.
Right. Well, I guess I could just go ahead and, while this poll's running. It looks like 85% of you are not using the load tracking. And then I will go ahead and, are you currently using Tekla EPM Go? And while this is going, I'm going to go ahead and try to test this for you guys.
Look at that. That's what I expected. Lots of people using that Go. Everybody wants to be mobile. Makes sense. We're just about finishing interface between load planning and Tekla EPM.
It does not look like that updates when you move a joist for the breakpoints.
Are there any other questions for me to answer while you're?
Okay, so
'Cause I don't see any more for some reason.
someone is excited to look at 2022 because they were using the XML, but they were having issues in Tekla. So we'll look at it again when we start using 2022.
Feel free to contact me. Feel free to contact me if you're having issues on that or through support, because we want this to work well.
Yeah, another person said the same thing, but they were using 2020. So
try that document. That might help out with some of the issues you're having.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so someone says we use the XML now, but the biggest issue that they come across when transitioning from the KISS import was just trying to get the field mapping / translation set up and finding the time to do so. It can seem a little overwhelming when you first jump into it. Maybe a separate webinar would help ease some of the worries. I would look at the document. That might help you a lot. It's very in depth as well, the document. So maybe where you're having your specific issues, we even have it mapped out on that document that you can skip around on there for specific titles or specific topics, I guess.
I'd love to have that information, because I'm working with Chris Randolph at Tekla, and again, our goal is to make this a nice, smooth interface as best we can. So SDS2 has lots of different settings that can really impact things quite a bit. So we want to make sure you have success. So knowing what these issues are, it may be a problem on our part, maybe a problem on their part. It's good to know what your issues are.
Yeah.
With EPM, that is, or sorry, PowerFab.
Okay, so it looks like 80% are not using the Tekla EPM Go. And do you currently use the project settings option, use member mark for member main material and model in SDS2, or do you just, I'm guessing the other option is, do you use it in the shop bill? Is that kind of what you're referring to, James?
Yeah, basically what happens here is I want to know how many people are actually using this option that I showed earlier, because that means that your main material piece mark is going to match your shipping mark, which is what life is like in the real world, as opposed to just having the bill of material one. So I want to know, are you using this option that the bill of material for the main material mark matches the model? In other words, they're both going to be 1B1 as opposed to 1B1 and W19 in the example I used, with that horrible voiceover that I did in the video.
Someone said, did I hear correctly, the automatic / scheduled IFC export to Trimble? Yeah, you did mention that.
Yep. Yeah, we're basically are working on that. I can't give you a date or time, but yeah, it'll automatically allow you to schedule to create the folder, and then you can just pull that from, set up your Trimble Connect so that you can just go ahead and pull that every night, because everybody wants that model to be updated. They want the whole model. So we've been working on that schedule. We're not there yet, but it'll be really nice. You can just automatically, and that's going to actually, we're starting with this EM11, but we plan on, going further with this with other things. It'll be nice just to have something scheduled automatically to send stuff out. So give us time. We'll get there.
It looks like 70% said yes, they do use that.
Yay! Awesome. Good. I think a lot of people need to realize that there were a lot of problems years ago with it, but nothing's perfect, but it's doing a lot better with that. It used to be miscellaneous members were the biggest problem because they didn't go through process. But if you're not using legacy miscellaneous members, they do go through process, and it does a better job of making sure those marks are matching. That was one of the biggest issues why people didn't use it. So you might want to relook at that again.
That actually just answered someone's question, because they said, does use member mark for member made material work better? When it first came out, it was broken. So
there you go. Hey, I'm going to say it's I will give you, it's working a heck of a lot better. And obviously people are using it. Yeah. Nothing's perfect, but good. Yeah.
Okay, we have our last poll. It says, do you input labor codes manually into the production control? And it looks like questions are slowing down too. I do have one more question, and I will wait to show you guys. Someone said, can I download all of the toolbox items at once instead of individually? And yes, there is a button. It says click here to download all the toolbox items, which that's really nice. I use that actually. And kind of slowing down here. Looks like about 70% said no.
Still 32% that say yes.
Yeah.
Well, I understand, because there's some people that have some extremely well-written codes. Cigarette breaks in there almost. And so they still want to use those manual codes to input them. But most of them have moved now to using the model.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and close this. And yep, it looks like about 68% said no, they do not.
I guess I should have followed up with how many people are using that, but
yeah. Okay, so one last thing on the toolbox page, it's the person asked, is there a way to download all of these? And yes, under the free toolbox downloads, there is a button to click to download all. You can do the 2022, 2021, and 2020. So we do have like a bulk download, which is nice. And then during the install, you choose which ones you want to install. There's like little check boxes there, so that's nice too. But yeah, kind of to wrap this up, we want to thank you guys again for joining us this week. We really appreciate that. We hope that you learned some information throughout all of the week and all the sessions. And if you missed anything this week, let me see if I can go back here. On the resources and under webinars, I will have this one up here, but down below on the on-demand webinars, I am putting up all of the webinars down at the bottom here. So they are all on demand if you missed anything this week. And then we have all of our previous webinars as well. But I will go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you guys again, and have a great day.
Thank you all.